Forget glory. Forget medals. In the Great War, soldiers didn't fight on open fields. They drowned in them. Every sunrise brought mud, rats, and death. This was the world beneath the battlefield. I still remember the first time they marched us to the front. We'd come from bright towns, still smelling of home, boots polished, rifles shining. By nightfall, the shine was gone. The roads were jammed with wagons, mules, and men. And somewhere ahead, the sky pulsed orange. That was the front. When we reached the trenches, the air hit like a fist, sour, heavy, alive with rot. They said each line was about 6 feet deep and 3 feet wide. Ours was deeper in spots, narrower in others, patched with chicken wire to stop the walls from caving. We slept on fire steps cut into the clay, rifles propped beside us, bayonets fixed. In front of us, a sandbag wall, the parapet. Behind us, another, the parados. Between them, a maze of communication trenches twisting back toward safety that never really existed. We had miles of these cuts in the earth, a scar stretching from the North Sea down to Switzerland. They said 475 miles. But with the support lines and supply routes, it felt endless. All of it dug by hand. We were soldiers, but we were also moles. The first night, I couldn't sleep. Shells boomed in the distance, and each explosion rolled through the mud like thunder under our feet. Rats scurried over our legs. The big ones fed on the dead that hadn't been buried deep enough. When dawn came, the rain began, steady, cold, unstoppable. It filled the trench until the floor became a brown river. We stood in that water for hours, boots soaked, feet numb. Some men's skin turned white and peeled away. Trench foot, they called it. The pain was like fire and ice together. The officers tried to cheer us. "Tee up," they'd shout, and for a few minutes the steam from the mugs almost made it feel human. We drank it sweet and strong. It was the only warmth we had. Sometimes we got tinned meat or Maconochie stew, vegetables and grease floating in watery gravy. If it wasn't heated, it turned our stomachs. We joked it could end the war faster than the Germans. They told us we'd stay on the line only 3 days at a time, then rotate back for rest. That was the British way. But a rest just meant digging new trenches or hauling barbed wire at night. We were always tired. The French and Germans had it worse. Some of them stayed weeks without relief. The sound of artillery was constant, a heartbeat of the front. When the guns fell silent, we grew nervous, because silence meant something was coming. We learned to read the shells by sound, the high-pitched whistle of incoming fire, the dull whoosh of gas rounds. At the shout of "Gas! Gas!" we fumbled for our masks, rubber, glass, and fear. Those who were slow never screamed for long. In daylight, we waited. You couldn't lift your head above the parapet. Snipers were patient men. So we lived hunched, whispering, writing letters on damp paper. I wrote to my mother about the weather and lied about the food. She'd never forgive the truth. At night, the sergeant made his rounds. We repaired walls, carried stretchers, filled sandbags. Sometimes we crawled into no man's land, cutting wire or bringing back the wounded. It was only a few dozen yards wide, but it might as well have been the end of the world, cratered, smoking, littered with helmets and bodies. The smell there stays with me still. Every few weeks came an attack order. You'd hear the rumor first, the officers whispering, the extra rations of rum. Then the ladders went up. We all knew what it meant. When the whistle blew, men climbed out and ran forward into gunfire so thick it hummed. I saw friends fall before they reached 10 yards. Some disappeared into smoke, never seen again. When it was over, We counted who was left and rebuilt the trench as if nothing happened. That was war. Between battles, life shrank to small things. A smoke passed along the line, a joke about home, the sound of boots squelching in mud. Sometimes a new man would arrive, clean uniform, nervous grin, and we'd know he'd soon look like the rest of us, older, grayer, quiet. We talked about food a lot. Steak and kidney pie, roast potatoes, beer served cold, dreams from another lifetime. Sleep was broken, never deep. You'd doze for minutes, then wake to the rattle of machine guns or the cry of a wounded man. We stopped reacting after a while. The brain protects itself by going numb. I remember the winter of 1916. The cold cut through every layer. Frost bit the rifles, froze the mud solid, turned corpses into statues. We burned anything that would catch: wood, rations boxes, sometimes even our own socks. Snow covered everything, softening the horror until the thaw came and the dead surfaced again. On the Eastern Front, they said it was worse. Siberian winds, frozen earth you couldn't dig. But we envied no one. Hell wears the same face everywhere. We weren't alone out here. Men from every corner of the empire stood shoulder to shoulder. Indians, Canadians, Australians, New Zealanders, Africans. They brought warmth, jokes, and courage. I fought beside an Indian corporal named Singh. He shared his ration tea, stronger than any I'd tasted, and told me stories of Punjab sunsets. He died 2 days later in a barrage. I still taste that tea when it rains. People at home called it the Great War. They imagined generals in chateaux and battles fought with honor. But even the officers bled. Many led from the front and died beside us. Out here, rank mattered less than luck. Shellfire didn't care who you were. They say we spent more time playing football than fighting. It sounds absurd, but it's true. Actual attacks were rare. The waiting was the real enemy. We played, joked, argued, anything to forget that death could fall from the sky at any second. When a shell landed close, you'd hit the ground, heart hammering, praying it wasn't your turn. Afterward, laughter, nervous, shaky, but laughter all the same. Some nights, letters arrived, paper soaked with hope. I'd read mine over and over until the words blurred. Then I'd write back. I'm fine. The food's good. We'll be home soon. Lies keep you alive out here. Truth is heavier than any pack. When men broke under the strain, they called it shell shock. Trembling, blank stares, screams in their sleep. We didn't have words for trauma then. Some were sent home, some were shot for cowardice. I never judged them. We all cracked. Some just cracked louder. By 1918, the trenches had become our whole world. We'd built dugouts like homes, shelves, candles, even little pictures on the walls. The mud had our footprints pressed into it like fossils. When peace finally came, it didn't feel real. We looked at each other, unsure whether to cheer or weep. I walked out of that trench one last time, boots heavy with earth and ghosts. They told us the war was over. But for those who lived in the trenches, it never really ended. The sound of shells followed us into our dreams. The smell of gas lingered in our clothes. Even now, when rain hits the ground just right, I can smell 1916 again. I often wonder what we were fighting for. Not medals, they tarnish. Not glory, that died with the first barrage. Maybe we fought for each other. The man beside us in the mud, the only one who understood. We called it the Great War. But for us, it was simply survival. A war fought not above the ground, but beneath it, in the dark, in the cold, in the endless trenches of the Western Front. And if you listen closely, when the wind moves across an empty field in France, you can still hear us, whispering through the mud.